Hi everyone, my name is Ekta Khurana, a current second year full-time MBA student at Weatherhead School of Management, Case Western Reserve University. I'm serving as the president of Graduate Business Student Association at Weatherhead. As you know that we're celebrating the month of March, which is proudly and widely called as the Women History Month, through a series where we will feature accomplished female business leaders from various industries who are also our alumni. Please allow me to introduce our guest of honor today, Susan P. Mucciarone. Susan,
Hello, Ekta.
Hi. Now, Susan is a member of the management committee and the executive director of Private Wealth at Glenmede, a privately owned investment and wealth management firm with approximately $40 billion in assets. She has more than 30 years of experience, including transformational leadership positions at Wachovia, now Wells Fargo. During her tenure at Wachovia, she served as a managing executive of Family Health, managing director of investment consulting, and president of the Alternatives Investments Group. She began her career in business accounting with BF Goodrich and Providia. She holds board appointments with the Girl Scouts of Eastern Pennsylvania, Natural Lands, and Case Western Reserve University. She serves on the visiting committee of the Weatherhead School of Management and is a member and former chair of the Trust Management Association. Susan has been recognized as one of the 50 most influential women in private wealth and was honored to serve as the 2017 commencement speaker for Bowling Green's College of Business and Education and Human Development. And today, ladies and gentlemen, it is my absolute privilege to invite her to share her thoughts on the series. Thank you, Susan, for making time for us.
Ekta, thank you for making time for this. It's really important work. I'm delighted to be with you.
Thank you. Here we go with the question number one. Did the courses you took at Weatherhead prepared you or set an impetus for your current role?
Without a doubt. Absolutely. As you mentioned, my early career was in the field of accounting and finance. And when I attended Weatherhead, I did so with intention. I was wanting to best prepare myself for a career in leadership and management, and actually wanted to set myself up to be closer to the client, to be closer to the dynamics of the business, closer to the dynamics of the market. So it was with intention that my course selection ended up informing my ultimate career path. Yes.
Great. I know you've spoken a lot about accounts and closer to the business, but my next question leads to that. Which was your most favorite subject while at Weatherhead and why? I'm expecting an answer other than accounts.
And that is absolutely right. And so I would say there were really two areas of study that have shown up tremendously in my career. One, it might have been before the notion of design thinking was fully formed and taught at Weatherhead, but there were several marketing courses that I took that opened up a completely different way of thinking about business, right? When you've majored in finance or accounting or statistics or operations research, it's very analytical, kind of linear. The marketing courses opened up an emphasis on understanding clients, on the changeability of circumstances, on the importance of communication and connection. And so those courses were fascinating to me. And then the other course, just unrelated to this conversation, I was looking at my transcript recently, and my husband and I shared a laugh because one of the last courses of my MBA, I think of it as a policy course, but the title was something like Problems in Business. And so when I think about, I'll have to get the exact name of that for you, but we just laughed about, we laughed about that because, that was a course about, problems in business and how they're resolved, and that there are no black and white answers. And it seems like in my career, I've had plenty of opportunities to resolve issues, or, to turn things around or to build things out. But I love problem solving. And I think that leadership has just been a series of developmental issues that do center around adversity and making things better.
Right. Now I can see why that course happened to be on the favorite subjects list. All right, now moving on. Susan, you have a long running career in wealth advisory and private client relationship management. How do you think this sector has evolved over a period of time as more and more females join the bandwagon?
So you're right. Good observation. When I first joined the investment business, there really were very few women in the field. A couple of things have changed. One is the focus of the investment field early on was targeted more to institutional buyers, if you will, right? Institutional investment managers, university or public endowments, foundation, public funds, boards of directors or investment committee boards making those decisions. During the course of my career, there was a shift in terms of the dominance of decision-making, right? From institutional clients to private clients. There was a great deal of wealth that was created in the 1990s. We have a whole host of people moving into their retirement, but the asset pool, those assets that are owned by individuals and families now are of far more significant size than the institutional. So that's one kind of overarching trend. And then, yes, women started coming in, and in the private wealth business, women bring a dimension of connectivity.
Yeah.
They bring a dimension of problem solving. The field has broadened out from strictly a focus on investment management to a focus on financial and estate planning, and a real understanding of what is the purpose, what matters to the family or the individual about life, and how can their financial assets enable the realization of that. And that's a complete turnaround from a focus on, does my investment portfolio outperform the S&P 500?
Yeah.
So,
I think just to add on the same lines, I think empathy comes really naturally to females, and that's what makes the most in this area. Like you said, it's not very robotic. We're just not looking at numbers, we're looking at what essentially you want, thinking about the entire family. So that comes naturally to females. That's what I feel.
That comes naturally to females. And look, the view of the client is not just the single decision maker, not necessarily just the person who created wealth, but it is the whole family. And so anyway, yes, a lot of dimensions, empathy, a new way of thinking and connecting, and really focusing in on what's most important to the client and building around that.
Now that we've spoken about females and this domain, and we also know that soft skills have a lot of essence in this domain of private client relationship management. But where, in your opinion, does the secret sauce lie?
Oh boy, the secret sauce in terms of, well, just to help me clarify, the secret sauce at an individual level or at the company level?
I think we're going to be specifically talking about the individual.
Okay, so the secret sauce for the individual, when I think about, so the secret sauce for an individual is going to be unique to that individual, right? So I think that's the first thing to say. And I think that in terms of your effectiveness, it's really about living in your own skin.
Okay.
What do I mean by that? That means really understanding what your aspirations are, what your innate strengths are, where are the areas that you might like to grow and develop, understanding what your aspirations are. Owning those aspirations. And I think that in this moment in history, maybe contrasted with when I was starting, I was there were definitely women who came before me, and those were the true pioneers. But owning your ambition, owning your aspiration was not necessarily a cultural norm for women at that time, whereas today, for women and men,
Yes.
owning their aspirations and working toward that is really incredibly important. And so taking the time to understand yourself, what it is that's important to you, and exploring and bringing that to life for you in a way that is unique to you is really the special sauce. You don't have to live by another company's standards or another person's standards. And the real secret sauce is finding what's most important to you. And if you follow that path, that will lead to an enriching career. And in fact, an enriching life. So yes, I think that's the secret sauce, is really, you have to start with knowing who you are, your truth, your aptitude.
Yeah, I'm sort of understanding this thing that when you're being your own self, the kind of people or the kind of clients you associate with, they'll also see the authentic self. And people relate much more with people who are authentic, real. So it's all interrelated, right?
It is absolutely interrelated. And, I discovered early on, as much as I really enjoy being on the front line, talking with people when they're in a decision-making place with respect to making an investment or deciding to work with a firm in, on their personal finances, I really had to believe in the integrity of what I represented. There's an intellectual integrity around what it is that you represent. And that was very important. That was a given for me. That had to be present, because I could only be effective when I was 150% confident that what I was representing was in fact in the best interest of the client. And that comes through, as you say, authenticity comes through.
Perfect. Now, we understand that the domain of private client relationship management works a lot through word of mouth publicity, and personal branding has a lot to play. So what are some of the skills that you recommend for someone who wants to be the best in this domain?
So you're right. In the private wealth business, nearly 80% of new clients are acquired by referral. So word of mouth. Now, look, word of mouth for somebody my age probably is word of mouth, picking up the phone and, making a phone call. Word of mouth in other generations may be more through social media. So one point, I guess, is understanding, how best to connect in order to grow and thrive, whatever industry you're in, but certainly this industry. In terms of, how does that inform skills? A person has to be expert at whatever their professional domain is. If it is investment management, if it's financial planning, if you're an estate lawyer, if you are an expert in family education, that expertise is essential, but it's also essential to be able to connect at a human level and to be able to ask for either a recommendation or ask the question, and know when to ask the question around, is there anybody else that you think could benefit from the work that we do? Because growth is the lifeblood of every business. And so in our business, we bring experts to interact with clients, and we support those experts in developing a skill that permits them to be effective in helping to grow the business. And for us, that means being able to ask for a referral effectively so that we can connect. Now, that's not where you stop, right? Because branding and marketing it is word of mouth, but you also have to have an online presence. You have to have your brand is established, and
Yes.
either you control and influence and shape that brand, or others will shape and define it for you. And so you have to be really smart about, again, understanding what as a company, what your personal brand is, and putting that forward. And as you probably well know, the same is true as it relates to your personal brand when you're preparing to market yourself for any number of reasons.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things which is most spoken in the business school is about networking, right? But I want to take your opinion on what are some of the tips you would like to recommend, especially to females when it comes to networking.
So thank you for asking this question. You cannot overstate the importance of networking. And again, many of us learn this the hard way. Many of us have learned to be very self-reliant, and that self-reliance has helped us navigate very, very effectively. But the community is so much more powerful.
Yeah.
Both in terms of support as you navigate through, but also in terms of unlocking potential and unlocking opportunities. It's very surprising how that network can work and sparks fly and people can experience exponential growth. So I don't think you can overstate the importance of that. So some specific tips would be, choose your networks wisely, right? There are a lot of women's groups out there. Choose your networks wisely, understand them, do it with intention. So definitely organizations. I have been a member of the Forum of Executive Women, and we have an important program on mentorship. And this is a wonderful way for those women who are earlier in their career to connect with, formally and informally, women who have navigated before. So that would be a terrific organizational model, I think, for someone. But the other ways are through board work or junior board work or advisory board work. In my experience, I've moved around to different cities throughout my career, and in every city, I was a Girl Scout growing up, and Girl Scouts, really have promoted girls in the context of character and confidence building. Courage, character, and confidence is part of the mantra.
Yeah.
And in every city in which I've lived, I've connected with the Girl Scouts and either was involved in committee work or board work. And through those connections, one, I developed a sense of community. And a sense of fulfillment that extended beyond the pure professional construct. So that was very important. And then the other thing is, it also provides opportunities to connect in ways you can't even imagine. At one time, I was in between jobs, and not my finest hour, right? But I was in between jobs. And the way I launched from where I was onto the path that set me directionally where I needed to go was through my volunteer work. I was working with an organization called the International House. And the International House was bringing dignitaries in from around the world and connecting them with business or industry colleagues in the city of Charlotte, North Carolina. And through that work, I met a couple of professionals at Bank of America and developed those contacts. And when one of them moved over to what at the time was First Union, and they were looking to build out a team, because I was in contact and they already knew me, I said, I'm in. I would do that in a heartbeat. And there you go, right? That's not your conventional job search. So networks are important on multiple levels.
Yes, no, I mean, you've touched on a very absolutely perfect point and at the right timing. The hiring process, the recruitment process has undergone so much of a change. I think very rarely you see the whole procedure of being asked to come for an interview, but it's mostly that you've had a conversation with the other person, not exactly in the job domain or just generally, and you know the person already. And because you've had an interaction and you have that rapport built and you know about their caliber already, that's
Mhm.
how the whole process starts. So it's just undergone so much of a change. And
It
I
had,
think
yes,
that that's how networking plays into the focus.
absolutely.
So I'm inquisitive to know, what does your usual business day look like?
My business day is highly varied, and
Hmm.
I love that. I surprisingly, with that underpinning in accounting, you might think a lot of stability and process. And again, there's definitely that aspect, and I'm really, really grateful for all of that financial education. But I love having that as the foundation, and then having all of the variety. So, what could the variety be? you know, um, Definitely, yesterday I had a conversation with someone who was contemplating retirement, and they were thinking out loud with me about how does Glenmede think about that? And, is there a way to have a glide path? Could I stay with my clients for the next year and then maybe go half time and then, maybe consult or something? The answer is yes. You can do that. So that was one conversation. Another conversation centered around, budgeting and planning.
Hmm.
Another conversation centered around a client. This particular client was not as happy about something as they could have been. Another client this morning, I had, spent 45 minutes with, and they were giving us some very positive feedback. So it's quite varied. It centers around clients. It centers around business management. It centers around employee engagement, satisfaction, and development, and then growth and projects and effectiveness and efficiencies, and
Yeah.
really engaging. And I would say that my Weatherhead degree absolutely prepared me for the multidimensional nature of leadership, business management, and executive management.
Now, out of all of these roles that you juggle in one single day, which one would you say is your favorite most, that you thrive on that? And which one would you say, oh, I still do it, but I would rather have somebody else take that from me?
Well, my absolute favorite is setting employees up for success.
All right.
That is my absolute favorite thing to do, wherever they are in their career spectrum, whether they're just starting out or whether, as in the case of my conversation yesterday, they're close to retirement. It is very enriching to set people up to thrive. So that's my absolute favorite, either setting them up to thrive, setting the foundation for the organization in which we work to thrive. So that's my absolute favorite. Let's see, maybe my least favorite, but I do it because it's absolutely necessary, is resolving conflict. Right. I tell my boss sometimes I feel like sometimes my job is all about brokering cooperation between and so but I will tell you this, it's really gratifying
Yeah.
when you tend to those conflicts, however small, or if they've gotten large, if you tend to them with intentionality and grace and authority,
Hmm.
the result is that it's like the tea kettle that boils, right?
Yeah.
You attend to those conflicts, and it provides the breakthrough moment that
Yes.
takes everybody to the next level. So it is the least favorite in the moment, but the outcome is profound, can be profound.
Well, I kind of feel that conflict resolution, it's also very systematic. And of course, it varies situation to situation, and again, seniority and the kind of employees or the kind of engagements. But I just feel it's very systematic. So there's a lot of procedure involved. Like you mentioned, you understand where the question is or where the hurdle is, and then you listen to the perspectives. It's a lot of anatomy that goes in the background. And that really says you're the champion in this. So it's fulfilling also, right? I mean, there was an issue between the two people which you resolved. Now they're able to work amicably with each other and gravitating towards the goals. So it's a gratifying one.
It is. I think that's right. It's very gratifying in the end. I will tell you the challenge is
Hmm.
sitting with the emotion,
Hmm.
right? Because the conflict, I love numbers. I loved statistics. I loved, it was formulaic and the answer was right or wrong. When you're dealing with people, this element of emotion. So it's really important to be able to, I'm going to use these words, sit with the emotions. And when the emotions are resident in other people, you don't want to, you just need to sit with them. They need to fly by, but you need to be able to you need to listen through the emotion
Hmm.
and help people, because people really cannot process, your executive function doesn't work
Hmm.
if you're emotionally charged on something. So it is an imperative to be able to navigate through that emotional charge, if you will, and be okay. Be okay. It's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay to have
Yeah.
strong emotions. Anyway, that's a
Hmm.
little bit of a sidebar.
Alrighty, moving on. Um, which, in your opinion, is the most valued corporate value which you feel, and why would you say that?
The most important corporate value. Well, I don't mind sharing with you that our corporate values are excellence with integrity, agility, and stewardship.
Hmm.
So if I had to choose just one of the, I think those work really, really well together because stewardship points you
Yeah.
to the long haul. Agility points to being flexible in adapting, being open-minded, trying new things, but excellence with integrity really speaks to being guided by doing the right thing, doing the best thing. And so I guess I'm drawn to the notion of excellence with integrity as being a critical corporate value, but I'm actually kind of challenging my thinking in the moment only because, and I'm going to change on this because
Sure.
actually stewardship,
Hmm.
in my mind, the stewardship, the long-term view, creating sustainable value.
Hmm.
In my mind, that notion of stewardship permeates everything. You have to keep your eye on doing what is best in the best interest of your constituents for the long term. And that will guide you. You just don't want to get stuck on that because
Yeah. Yeah.
if you take it to the extreme, then you miss the opportunities to make adjustments along the way. But I'm gonna change. If I could only choose one, I'm gonna shift my emphasis to sustainability, stewardship for the long haul.
Got it.
I saw a little agility there in a moment.
No, I really like it. In fact, I was thinking when you mentioned about all three of them, and I was really thinking if I had to make a pick, which one of that is going to be. And I kind of knew that you're going to first pick integrity.
How about that?
All right, now moving on. The next question is a very interesting question. We understand that people who are passionate for the job makes the best employees. Now, what are some of the ways of checking passion for the job during a job interview, which you have applied if you have situations to quote?
Yes. Okay. So the way that we check for the passions, right, is probably may be depending upon years of experience, right? Like in your case, I understand you have years of experience, so some of your passions are going to come through in those choices. Earlier people, earlier career students who or applicants candidates who may not have those years of experience, what we'll look for are in their demonstrated interest in that field, either through community or club activity or project activity or self-study, or even, in some cases, family dynamics and family conversations. My uncle was in the investment business, and I always enjoyed going to his office and doing XYZ, whatever the answer is. But we do look for signs of fit, cultural and value fit, and then we look for signs of an interest and a passion for the field. And whether it's on the financial side, the investment side, whether it's on the people side, or education or
I'm making mental notes.
Yeah, very good.
Okay. Now, Susan, the corner office can get you pressed on priorities. So what are some of the ways in which you stay connected with the employees and find time for them?
Well, again, thank you for asking that question, because I told you one of my greatest pleasures is, setting people, employees and clients, but setting people up for success. That's changed since the pandemic, right? It's easier to stay connected when you're physically present.
Yeah.
But even then, you have to be intentional, because it's natural to be drawn to people with whom you have a shared interest.
Yes.
And it's easy to get into habits. And so you want, as a business leader, you want to inspire everyone to be their best, and even people who are different from you. So, I would make it a point to have lunches or breakfasts with different groups of employees. I've encouraged my leadership team to take time to connect with folks. I would write notes to people. I would show up. We have a couple of company, what would it be called, groups that formed organically. Like there's a women in investment group. They go by the word wing. I love that. Wing, Glenmede Wing, women in investments at Glenmede Wing. And, men and women show up. And so to just show up there does a couple of things. One is it exposes you to people that you might not otherwise be exposed to. And it says your presence as a leader says a lot about the importance of those efforts, just by your mere presence. I'm responsible for regional offices across mostly the East Coast now. I go to see those, I visit those offices on a regular basis. Since the pandemic, we've done things a little bit differently. You mentioned that I was a member of management committee. We had video meetings with members of management, maybe 6 or 8 people on a call. And we didn't even talk about business. It was about creating a space to bump into people in the hallway and just have the kinds of conversations that you have on a daily basis that really form the connective tissue of engagement and interaction. So those are a couple of ideas. And then certainly one-on-one coffees. And I have a terrific assistant who helps. She has this uncanny way of knowing what's going on around the organization. So we have a very strong partnership, and helps me stay connected if I'm not seeing certain opportunities to do so.
Awesome. Now, we've spoken a lot about your day in the office and everything about the corporate side, but on days when you're not working, how would you like to spend your time?
On days that I'm not working, I really have enjoyed my community activities. I mentioned the Girl Scouts.
Yes.
You mentioned the Board of Trustees, and then of course, natural lands. The natural environment is very important to me. So that's wonderful. I am blessed. My parents are still alive. They're 96 and 92. And so now they are in Cleveland. They're in the Cleveland area. I'm in Philadelphia. But I enjoy spending time with them as often as I can. I'm fortunate that to have a wonderful, loving husband, and he and I spend time together. He has a daughter who's in her 40s now, and so she and her husband are a part of our family, and we very much enjoy time together there. And then the last thing that I'll just cite is I took up piano again. I played piano as a child. I took up piano over 10 years ago now.
Okay.
And there's nothing I love more than sitting at the piano and playing classical music. And so that's really how I enjoy spending my time now.
Yeah.
Outside of work. I love, of course, the cultural arts and dance and, the orchestra and that sort of thing. And
Awesome.
so that's probably enough. Yeah. But obviously I have a lot of interests outside of my career as well to keep me engaged and intellectually stimulated and exploring, just continuing to explore things.
Awesome. So many dimensions to your personality, Susan. We've spoken about the corporate side. We've spoken about these interests, how you are so much more vested in making sure that your employees are also doing their best in whichever areas or domain that they want to. You've tried to stick around with everyone and try to make sure that everyone feels good. So many things. But if everything had to be compacted into one word, how would you like to define yourself in that one word?
How would I like to define myself in a single word? Well, I probably should have prepared for this a little bit better.
I feel like I posed an interview question to you.
Well, I'll tell you, here's one thing I would say. We had a conversation with our women employees, and the question was asked, using the first letter of your first name, what's the single word that you would use to describe yourself? And so again, I took liberties and used two words, because I would say that the defining characteristic for me is I'm sensitive. I have a high degree of sensitivity, and that's a strength. It is really, a lot of times in a business context, people think of being kind or being sensitive is not powerful. And so, yes, absolutely. Sensitivity is a strength, and it is indeed quite powerful, because the human connection is really the piece that makes the biggest difference in the ability to transform, to create, to change, and to realize whatever objectives you have, because you're doing it through a community of people.
Exactly. I was just going to say, we're all surrounded with people. And if we don't have that emotional quotient where we're not able to understand what the other person who's working right next with us or who's working in our team has, then what's the point of all of this, right? It's everyone in it together. And that's how we succeed. So you very rightly said, it's about human quotient and understanding, and sensitivity plays a great deal. So yes. I agree with that one word of yours.
Good, thank you.
Okay, now years of experience behind you. So much you've done, so many industries you've been a part of. If you had to give your younger self a piece of advice now, what would that be?
I think that one's a little easy, because I've actually been reflecting on it a little bit. I think there are two pieces. One is, and it ties sort of to your question about network, but one is make sure you have a support structure, right? The right kind of support structure, because it's very rare that your career is just straight up, it's more like a stock market chart. If you were to chart the S&P 500 through periods of volatility, that's more like what a career really looks like. And so having that support system in place can help you navigate through that with far greater ease. That's one piece of advice. The second piece that maybe ties to that is learn how to tame your inner critic.
Okay.
Learn how to tame your inner critic, right? We all have that part of ourselves that holds ourselves to a very high standard. And when we don't achieve it, there's that piece of us that goes, that's very helpful in many regards, because it helps you rise to the next level, right? It helps you take in information that's important and valuable. but it's critically important to tame it. It has its place. It needs its boundaries.
Yeah.
See the value, but don't, so, and it's a lifelong quest, we all have, but learn to tame that inner critic. And between that support system and taming, you be the master of that inner critic.
And
you determine when it's helpful and when it's not so helpful.
This is such a great point, and I'm so glad you mentioned it. I think it ties to the conversation that we were having before we started the interview, that it's your narrative.
It is your narrative.
So you're going to have ups and you're going to have those expectations, and at the same time, some downs as well. Be easy on yourself, stay focused, but be easy, like you mentioned. So I really, really like this point.
Good. Well, look, one of the pieces of advice that I've received over the years is ask yourself the question, what advice would you give your friend?
Mm-hmm.
And then you take that advice for yourself. What advice would you give a friend? Treat yourself with the kind of understanding and grace that you would treat a good friend with.
Absolutely.
And that's been helpful.
Absolutely.
Still have high standards, as I'm sure you and your fellow students do.
Alrighty. Now here's the thing, Susan, we've come to the end of the segment. What is the one piece of advice you want to give to all the young aspirants who aim to make it big someday?
Well, the piece of advice that I would want to give is go for it. Absolutely. With abandonment and boldness, go for it. Right. So yes, even if you can only see the next level, because right now that's just where your mind is or your circumstances are, take the step forward toward that. And it will start to open. You have to know yourself, know your heart, know your mind, know your being. What I think you use the words, it's your journey.
Yes.
This is your journey. Know yourself and go forward. Be okay with the risks. So let's see, this is not very concise.
No, I like it.
One piece of advice is know yourself and
taste the waters
and be willing to experience that journey fully.
Yes.
Experience that journey fully, and you will unquestionably reach every aspiration that you have.
I'm feeling so much more powerful right now when I've heard such great words. This is just exactly what everybody wants to listen to, that have faith in what you're doing, in what you're pursuing, in what you've dreamt of, and just keep moving. Do not think about left, right, and center. Things will fall into the place, but you have to just keep going and have that faith retained within you. It is for you, it's going to come to you. And
if your vision isn't clear yet, if your vision, long-term vision isn't clear yet, that's okay.
Yeah.
Then what is your short-term step? And go there and see what else you learn, because all of those interim pieces will form your vision, and they will certainly form your legacy.
That is so powerful. Well, thank you so much, Susan, for giving so valuable time and sharing such incredible insights with us. It's been such a pleasure and a true honor to have you as our guest on the series that aims to celebrate the women power, not just today, but forever.
Well, it is my pleasure. Thank you so much for including me in this series. I can't wait to see you in person in the spring.
Thank you.